morning and welcome to Urban Update. I am Alberto Vasallo. And on the show this morning, young professionals contributing to the many positive aspects of living in Lawrence. Also on the program, a look at Youth Connect, one of Boston's most valuable resources for at-risk youth. And well-known Boston photojournalist Don West is back on the show, and I want to ask him about his portraits of purpose and the past year. But up first, young adults ages 18 to 24 are the most likely to find their way into Massachusetts prisons, and they're the quickest to return upon release. Now, they account for 1/5 of those sentenced to state prisons and nearly 1/4 sent to county houses of correction. And young adults of color suffer disproportionately. Give you an example. In 2013, Black and Hispanic youth made up 25% of this population segment, yet they comprise 43% of county prison commitments and 63% of state prison commitments for that age group. Now, a new Mass Inc. study finds that changing Massachusetts' approach to young offenders should be a central focus for the state's effort to reduce recidivism and increase public safety. To tell us more about the findings, we've invited Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, he's been on the show before, but he's also been a very vocal advocate of doing as much as possible. And, of course, my good friend, my new friend, Benjamin, and your last name, Benjamin?
Forman.
Forman. How are you, Benjamin Forman?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of Mass Inc. So thank you for coming by. Your research, one of the research guys over there, right?
Yeah, we look at a lot of different issues, but lately we've been focused on criminal justice reform because we think it's one of the most pressing issues facing our Commonwealth, and we're really thankful that you're giving it some attention.
Oh, well, the sheriff wants to talk about it. We got to talk about it, Sheriff. I just want to give you the floor here because this is something that's really been a major part of your entire kind of service.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, Alberto, we have far too many people in our correction facilities and in our state facilities. I mean, for us to be the biggest dog on the block talking about the United States, we incarcerate more of our citizens than any other nation on the planet. And something's got to be done about that. And just let me point this out. It costs $50,000 a year to incarcerate one individual, $15,000 for education, maybe $17,000 to $20,000 for substance abuse or mental health attention. So what we have to do really is get in front of the curve, not behind the curve. It's much too costly, not only to taxpayers who are paying the freight for this, but when you take a male or a female out of that household, you're breaking up the family unit.
Right. So over at Mass Inc., you guys have been taking a kind of closer look, and if you can expand a little bit on what the sheriff said, what kind of impact does this have on the normal person out on the street or the viewer at home this morning?
It's all about public safety. If we want to keep our neighborhoods as safe as we can, we got to treat the people with behavioral issues in ways that make them less likely to come back into our criminal justice system and to create new victims. When we look at the population in our prisons, 3/4 of them have been there before. So reducing recidivism is really the strategy, and when you think about how you do that, this age group is particularly important, 18 to 24-year-olds, because as you noted, as you started off the program, they're the highest likelihood of reoffending.
All right. So I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here, right? At the age of 18, shouldn't you know already the difference between right and wrong? And are these individuals treatable? Can they be, can their paths be changed, their path going into the wrong direction?
Absolutely. 18 to 24-year-olds clearly know the difference between right and wrong, especially when we're looking at the seriousness of the things that they're coming in for. They don't want to be doing those things. The issue is control. Their brains aren't fully developed. They're in situations that are emotionally charged, and often they make mistakes. Because their brains aren't fully developed, often they don't have the same level of future-oriented thinking. And also, in the way our society is changing today, 18 to 24-year-olds don't have the ties and the roots that they used to in the past. They're not married today. They don't have kids. They don't have steady careers. But they're out of the house, and they're in these environments and situations where they often get themselves into trouble. And so what do we do about that? We want our response to make them less likely to commit another crime, not more likely.
And I'm going to come back to the but you're in charge of housing these folks, okay? Ben says prisons built for adults don't work for youth, especially in their late teens and early 20s. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no, absolutely. Because as Ben just alluded to, that 18 to 24-year-old cohort, their brains are still developing. And there are a lot of things that they don't know. You put that individual into an environment where you have 35, 40-year-old guys and gals who have been around the block several times. I mean, that's almost a prescription, where you've got an institution to teach criminality. And so, no, you really shouldn't mix those two groups.
All right, so what do you do? What are some suggestions? What is being done? Are there other places around the country taking a different approach that maybe Massachusetts should look at?
The first thing you got to do is go across the pond and look at Europe, because they've been working at this problem very differently for a very long time. They don't treat young adults like adults. They treat them much more like juveniles. Recently the governor of Connecticut went to Germany and saw how they treat their young adults, and came back and said, one, we're going to start raising the age of our juvenile courts to 21, and we're going to create separate facilities for 18 to 25-year-olds. And that's the first state to do anything like that, but a number of cities are doing things differently. And even in Massachusetts, there's some pockets of some really good work going on, including all that's happening at Suffolk County.
Yeah. So what is happening at Suffolk? How do you transition? How does your office work with? I mean, I had College Bound Dorchester.
Right.
Okay.
At-risk,
right. At-risk kids, right?
Yeah.
Are you working with a lot of these? Does that need to continue to happen?
So let me tell you about a program that we're putting together. It's going to start in January. It's called Family Matters. We're going to take a cohort of about 30, 35 inmates. We're going to match them up with our caseworkers. We're going to deal with that inmate, but we're also going to deal with that inmate's entire family. There's a lot of things that go on the home front where folks at home may not know of the social services that are out there. So if you got mom or dad, grandmom at home, and they want to get some services, they don't know where to get the services, we're going to work with them to do that. You've got kids at home, we're going to get them into athletic and educational programs. The hallmark of any vibrant community, Alberto, is how that community or how that society kind of wraps its arms around the most compromised, and our youth are the most compromised. And so we really have to be diligent about making sure that they have things like affordable housing to live in, a good education system, and healthcare.
Well, we've got some information for folks who want more on massinc.org. It's up on the screen. But before I let both of you guys go, it's Sunday. I know you're supposed to be with your families. So I know Suzanne over at Hyde Park is waiting for you with a nice lunch. Maybe I'll be over with you.
Come on over, brother.
I'm coming over, Suzanne. Lunch for two. And you got Ann and the kids watching over in JP, right? Why don't you give a shout out to them?
Happy New Year, honey.
He's got nothing to say. You can tell he's been married for a while. Okay. Coming up next, Byron Barnett gives us an overview of a youth program with a great work relationship with the Boston Police Department, coming up right here on Urban Update.